Good morning, everyone. My name is Judge Tamika West Bernard. I'm presiding over the preliminary hearing calendars for this morning. The next hearing we have on the calendar is the state of Georgia versus Malik Cortez Deshaun Moses, warrant number 2023 CW 50029 for the charge of murder. The second charge we have is warrant number 2023 CW 50030 for the charge of aggravated assault. The next charge we have is warrant number 2023 CW 50031 for the charge of possession of a firearm and or a weapon during a crime. Those are the three charges pending against Mr. Moses. The state is represented by ADA Cheryl Freeman, and the defendant, Mr. Moses, is represented by attorney Nicole Jones. Ms. Freeman, are you ready to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. State Constable Detective Moore, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear and affirm that the testimony about to provide in the matter of the state of Georgia versus Malik Moses will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Please tell us your name and how you're employed.
I'm Detective Tracy Moore. I'm employed with the Clayton County Police Department. I'm currently assigned to the Criminal Investigation Division in Major Felony as a detective. I have been in my position for over 5 years. I have been with the department for 9 years now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Detective, were you working with the Clayton County Police Department on January 3rd of 2023?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
And were you with the initial officers who responded to a person shot call at 345 Windermere Way in Jonesboro?
Yeah, well, I was called out after, ma'am, but the decedent was still on scene when I arrived.
Okay. When you arrived, what did you learn that had occurred regarding the decedent?
I learned that officers had already apprehended the person who shot. He was apprehended less than a mile away. He was running from the location. Per witnesses called in saying that this person was running down the street, and that's the person that we were looking for. I learned that Mr. Quentin Morris was deceased on scene. He had an apparent gunshot wound.
Your Honor, I'm going to
chest.
her reading from her report. I mean, if she needs to refresh her recollection, she can, but she cannot testify by reading from the report.
Sustained.
Go ahead, Detective.
I was reading from my probable cause statement that I wrote, ma'am. So I was referring to that. But I can just go from memory if it's
Detective, right? If you can testify from memory, and then if you need to refresh your recollection, just let me know.
Okay. There was a firearm laying beside the Mr. Morris on scene. There was a couple of other items, a cell phone, rolling papers. I can't remember what else, but there was some things laying beside him. Again, the officers had followed or chased down the Mr. Moses, who was identified as the person who did this. I did interview Mr. Moses. He was Mirandized, and he spoke to me briefly. He stated that he did go meet with Mr. Morris and that he got scared and Mr. Morris was shot with his own gun, and then he stated he wanted an attorney.
And Detective, let's go back. So when you stated that Mr. Morris was still on the scene when you got there, where was he shot on his body?
I would need to refresh my recollection, ma'am. I believe it was his chest, but I would have to refresh myself.
Okay. If you could take a moment to review your probable cause statement, just so to make sure you're sure.
Okay. Okay, it was shot in the back with apparent stippling on the shirt, so that would be a pretty close range. And then the exit would have come through the chest, so he was shot in the back.
The firearm that was found lying next to Mr. Morris, was that the firearm that he was shot with?
We're not sure at this time, ma'am. It'll have to be tested by the GBI, so we're not unsure right now.
Was Mr. Malik Moses found with a firearm on his person?
He was not. He did, during the interview, he did state that he had a weapon and he lost it or tossed it or something near where his jacket was located under a back porch. We did not locate that weapon. We put dogs out for article searches and we never located that weapon. I'm not certain that he even had a weapon other than the one that was on scene.
The statement that Mr. Moses gave you, just so we're clear, he stated that Mr. Morris shot himself with the gun?
No. I get the names confused. Mr. Moses said that he went to go meet Mr. Morris.
Mhm.
He said he got scared. I mean, and Mr. Moses got scared of Mr. Morris. He said he had made him threats or something before. And then he stated that Mr. Morris was shot with his own weapon. He didn't say who shot. I would assume, I mean, I know we can't assume, but I would assume that it would have been Mr. Moses. But then he said because he was scared and then he didn't want to talk anymore. He wanted an attorney.
Did Mr. Moses give a reason why he was running from the scene?
No, ma'am. Or not to me.
Do you know if he made any statements to the patrol officers who were chasing him?
I'm not aware, ma'am. I would have to go back and watch their body cam video, and it's just been a short time. I have not been able to do that at this time.
Okay. And also my next question, officers were wearing body cam during this
Yes.
time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you recall what type of firearm that was used?
The one that we found on scene was a Glock 43X extended magazine.
Were there shell casings located?
We did not locate a shell casing, ma'am. We did look very thoroughly and did not locate one.
Okay. Did this happen in Clayton County?
Yes, ma'am, it did.
Thank you. No further questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Attorney Jones, your witness.
Did you test for any gunpowder residue on Mr. Moses's clothes?
We did take samples, yes, ma'am, but we have not. We don't have those results from the GBI at this time.
Did you test for any gunpowder residue on Mr. Moses's hands?
Yes, ma'am. We took a sample again. We got a search warrant and took samples, and they got to be sent to the GBI, and we have to get the testing done at the GBI. So we don't have those results
For his hands?
I can refer to the warrant and be sure and tell you, but I'm certain that's where we typically would collect, is from the hands and from the face is typically where we would collect from. But I did not do that collection. That was done by our CSI. So I would have to refer to their report.
And I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. You said his clothes were taken into evidence?
If I recall correctly, ma'am, I would have to again refer to the CSI report. I was not notified of this hearing. I didn't know about this hearing until this morning. So I was not able to review everything as thoroughly as I would like to have.
Okay. And I think you previously testified you never found the gun, or you do not know if you guys found the gun that was used in the shooting.
You're correct on that. We did find a Glock 43X next to the decedent, and we did not locate one on Mr. Moses on his person or nearby where he was apprehended.
And you stated earlier that they did a very thorough search for a gun or anything like that nearby?
They did. Yeah, we searched the area, and then they went back with a dog and did an article search with a canine officer and did not locate a weapon.
Time of day did this happen?
It was in the afternoon. Can I refer to my probable cause to give you a time?
Yes, ma'am.
12:12 is when we got the call.
And if you remember correctly, the only description of the shooter you had was a dark black man.
I
with
believe
dreads.
they indicated he had dreads, and I believe there was a clothing description, but I'm not clear on that. I'd have to go back through the report.
Did any of the witnesses identify Mr. Moses directly?
You mean by name?
Yes, by name.
No, ma'am.
Was there a lineup for Mr. Moses?
No, the only person that I thought that could possibly have done that, they indicated they would not have had a good face view, so there was no reason to do a photographic lineup.
So at 12 noon, no one that was a witness can actually identify the face of the actual shooter.
You're correct.
And Mr. Moses was stopped because he was running in the area.
I would have to refer to those other officers' report, but the witness, I know what I was told when I got on scene was that witnesses gave a description, and they were calling in saying that he was running down, I believe, Kendrick Road. He made it all the way near the school and where he was apprehended. And I believe the clothing description matched with the jacket that he had a jacket that was like I think it was like a Tommy Hilfiger jacket or something, but it was like red and white and blue or something. But yeah, he had dumped that jacket when they had apprehended him.
So I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. The witnesses stated after hearing gunshots that they saw a black man running away, correct?
I think it was a little more descriptive, but yes, correct.
Okay, black man with dreadlocks and a t-shirt.
And I believe that jacket was described. Yes, ma'am. Correct.
And none of the witness stated that they saw a gun in his hand, correct?
Oh, yes, ma'am. As he was running or as he shot Mr. Moses?
As he was running away, the description that they said, none of the witnesses
I don't
saw a
believe
gun.
so. I don't recall, ma'am. I can't tell you one way or another.
And how many witnesses were in the area that you stated gave a statement?
To my knowledge, there were three. I'm sorry, there were four witnesses. I believe three were eyewitnesses, but if I recall correctly, two gave written statements, if I recall correctly.
And out of that, no one saw the shooter's face.
I don't believe so, no, ma'am.
And you stated that you read Mr. Moses's rights when you
Correct.
saw him?
Yes, ma'am. Or not when I saw him, when he came for an interview. Yes, ma'am.
And where was your interview at?
At police headquarters.
Was that recorded?
Yes, ma'am.
And that is when you asked him, why was he running?
I don't know exactly what I asked him. I just remember the brief statements he made to me that I actually put into my probable cause was what I had indicated earlier, that he stated that he was going to meet the decedent. He stated he had previously had been threatened by him, and he had to, I can't remember his exact words, but he said something to the effect that if he gave him his gun or something, that he was going to shoot him with it. Like he was scared he was going to shoot him with it. So he had to do what he had to do. And he said that he was scared. So he shot, I don't remember if he said, yeah, he did say I'm positive that he did indicate that he shot Mr. Moses out of what he would have, I guess, seemed to think would be self-defense, because he did say something to the effect, I don't have it verbatim, but it was something to the effect that if he didn't shoot him, then he was going to get shot. So I don't remember what the particulars were. Again, I just found out about this. I would have liked to have listened to my interview prior to this yesterday, but I wasn't notified till kind of late. And I wasn't aware. So, but he did say something to the effect that he had to do what he had to do, because if he didn't, then Moses would have shot him. And he stated,
And I'm sorry, it's now your testimony, because earlier you testified basically saying he didn't say anything. So now when you're going through, you're remembering that he said all this stuff?
Yeah, it's not a lot. I do remember him saying something to the fact that I remember him saying that he was threatened by him, and I remember him saying that he had to do what he had to do. And it was almost like he was, and yes, as I'm remembering, I'm thinking about this case. I've had 4 murder cases, ma'am, all in a row.
I
So it's,
understand that.
so I get kind of mixed up a little bit, but again, I would have liked to have had more time to review this case, but
So
yes,
this
ma'am,
case
he
could
did.
be mixed up with the other 3
No,
murder
ma'am,
cases you have.
it's not mixed up at all. No, ma'am.
It's not. Okay, so when you went in front of the magistrate judge and did a warrant for his arrest, all this information that you're saying today is not included in the warrant, and you stated in the warrant something entirely different, the warrant that you just read.
Totally
So-
did not state something different, ma'am. It stated that he went to meet him, that he was scared, and that,
He asked for an attorney.
and there was one, I believe there was one more thing, but yes, correct.
So all the other statement that you said, saying that he shot, he did this, is something that you just now remembered, but you didn't remember
Yes.
when you went to the warrant the day after?
No, I don't typically put everything in my warrants, ma'am. I put enough for probable cause in my warrants, ma'am.
Okay, so you leave possible information out that could be, defenses or
No,
stuff.
it
out of your
definitely would
warrant.
not be left out of the case file. We're talking about a warrant. We're talking about a probable cause, ma'am. We're not talking about a case. I don't put all my information in my case, in my warrants. I've never done that.
I do understand that. You put what you think is important into the warrant, correct?
I put what I think makes us get to probable cause. Yes, ma'am. I don't put the whole case.
Okay, so you add what you think will get you to probable cause. Okay. And then the next question is, so other than seeing him run, there was no lineup. I just want to make sure there's no lineup for Mr. Moses, correct?
I did not create a lineup. No, ma'am.
And there was no witness to come forward saying that you saw or can identify Mr. Moses as the shooter, correct?
Not by name. No, I believe by clothing description is what they told the officers was the clothing description.
And to your knowledge, you only saw him after he came back to do an interview with you, correct?
Oh, I saw where the officer had him apprehended in a vehicle. I did go over there and I had the county photographer take photographs of him.
And
Yeah, and then he was brought back to our headquarters and I did do an interview. That's correct.
so you're also stating that the stippling, so you're trying to say it was close range, correct?
I would believe that's from my training, knowledge, and experience. When you see stippling, it doesn't mean it. I mean, it depends. If you see gunpowder around like on the jacket of someone or around the wound, then yes, it's closer range than. And I'm not a firearms expert. I can't testify to how far, but I do know that it's closer range than if there were none. Then that means the gun was so far away it did that burn gases and stuff did not reach that person or that piece of clothing.
And to make sure there was no blood residue or anything on Mr. Moses when you came in contact with him, correct?
I don't recall, ma'am. I don't believe so, but I don't recall.
And I want to verify, I think we said it earlier, when Mr. Moses was apprehended, there was no gun on his person, correct?
That is correct. However, I did in his jacket, I did find, I believe a couple of unspent rounds were located in his jacket.
And it's not illegal to have bullets in your jacket, correct?
Nope, it's not, ma'am.
And the fact that you have bullets doesn't mean that you actually have a gun, correct?
No, ma'am, it doesn't.
Without a gun, those bullets cannot actually penetrate and shoot someone, correct?
That's correct.
And those bullets were standard bullets that can fit any, I guess, 9mm gun, correct?
Yeah, any 9mm bullet, to my knowledge. I mean, I'm not a firearms expert, but as far as I know, any 9mm can go in any 9mm. That's correct.
I have no further questions.
Okay, any redirect, A.A. Freeman?
I know you're under the state rest.
Okay, Attorney Jones, do you have any witnesses for the
No
defense?
witnesses, just arguments for the defense, Your Honor.
Okay, we're ready for argument.
Yes, the state waives opening.
Okay, Attorney Jones.
Your Honor, we'd ask that the charges themselves be dismissed against Mr. Moses. As stated beforehand, there are no witnesses to actually state that Mr. Moses is a shooter. There is no gun that was found on Mr. Moses to say that he was a shooter. There is, even though it was 12 o'clock in the afternoon with daylight, as stated before, there was no lineup, no witnesses, other than the fact that he was a black man wearing black shirt, black pants, running after a gunshot. So we do ask that the charges be dismissed for the murder, even with the aggravated assault and the possession of the firearm, as there was no firearm or anything found on Mr. Moses when he was arrested.
Okay. ADA Freeman.
Thank you, Judge. We're asking that all the charges be bound over. And I think Detective Moore testified to more than just being a black man running down the street. There was a description of his clothing that matched what Mr. Moses had on. Mr. Moses also in his interview indicated that, as Detective Moore stated, that he shot the decedent as if possibly that he was scared for whatever reason. We believe that the testimony provided by Detective Moore is more than sufficient for probable cause for the charge of murder, aggravated assault, and a possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime. So I'm asking that all charges are bound over to Superior Court.
Thank you. Based upon the evidence and testimony by the witness, I do find sufficient probable cause to bind over all charges against Mr. Moses, specifically for the charge of murder, aggravated assault, as well as possession of a firearm and or weapon during a crime. That will be the order of the court, and that will conclude the preliminary hearing for Mr. Moses. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. May Detective Moore be excused?
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Detective.
Yes, ma'am. Have a great day.
How are you too?
Thanks.